There are moments in life when we yearn for recognition. A desire to be seen, heard, or praised may quietly take root in our hearts, whispering that our worth is determined by the applause of others. Yet, through the quiet wisdom of writers like C.S. Lewis, we are reminded of a greater truth, a truth rooted in humility, diligence, and faith. Lewis, a man whose works have illuminated countless souls, offers a profound lesson in the value of working in silence, for a higher purpose, and without the need for human approval. C.S. Lewis did not write to amass fame or fortune. Though his books, Mere Christianity, The Chronicles of Narnia, and The Screwtape Letters, are celebrated worldwide, his intention was never to seek the approval of men. Instead, he worked diligently in the service of a higher calling. His life and writings echo the teaching found in Psalm 1 verse 2. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. This scripture aligns beautifully with Lewis's approach to life and work, centering all endeavors around God, rather than the fleeting praise of the world. Lewis believed that every action, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, could serve a divine purpose when done with the right heart. He once wrote, "Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching." This principle challenges us to examine our own motivations. Are we laboring for the applause of others, or are we, like Lewis, striving to fulfill a calling placed deep within our souls? The path of silent, humble work is not an easy one. In a world filled with noise and relentless demands for attention, choosing quiet diligence requires courage and faith. It asks us to trust that our efforts, seen or unseen, have eternal value. As the Apostle Paul wrote in Colossians 3 verse 23, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters." Lewis exemplified this attitude in both his writing and his personal life, offering us a powerful example to follow. Consider the way he lived his life, away from grand stages or worldly celebrations. Much of his greatest work was born in the solitude of his study at Oxford, in the quiet countryside of England, or during deep conversations with close friends. He was not concerned with accolades, but with speaking truth in love. This deliberate choice to labor in obscurity mirrors the life of Christ, who often withdrew to quiet places to pray, teach, and serve. As we begin this reflection on C.S. Lewis and the lesson of working in silence, let us open our hearts to the timeless wisdom he offers. Let us learn from his example, rooted in scripture and faith, and strive to embrace the call to labor not for applause, but for the glory of God. To truly understand the value of working in silence, we must delve into the life and legacy of C.S. Lewis, as well as the spiritual truths that shaped his philosophy. His writings and personal journey demonstrate how quiet perseverance and steadfast faith can yield a profound impact, one that transcends time and touches eternity. Lewis's life was not marked by immediate success or recognition. In fact, his early years were filled with struggles, doubts, and personal loss. Losing his mother at a young age and enduring the harsh realities of boarding school left a deep mark on his heart. He wrestled with questions of faith, initially rejecting God and embracing atheism during his youth. These trials, however, were not without purpose. In the silence of his inner struggles, God was at work, preparing him for a calling far greater than Lewis could have imagined. It was during his time as a professor at Oxford that Lewis began to embrace a quiet, yet determined approach to his work. Writing became both his ministry and his form of worship. In his essay The Weight of Glory, Lewis articulates a truth that resonates deeply with the principle of working in silence. The work of a Beethoven and the work of a charwoman become spiritual on precisely the same condition, that of being offered to God, of being done humbly as to the Lord. This mindset shaped how Lewis approached his vocation. Whether crafting imaginative tales like the Chronicles of Narnia or penning deeply theological works like Mere Christianity, he poured his heart into his work, offering it as a gift to God rather than a bid for public praise. His focus was not on the audience or the accolades, but on the eternal impact his words could have. The lesson here is one of alignment, ensuring that our labor aligns with God's will and serves his purposes. In Matthew 6 verse 1, Jesus warns, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven." Lewis embodied this principle by allowing his work to remain an offering to God, even when he did not receive immediate recognition. One of the most striking aspects of Lewis's life was his humility. Despite his growing popularity, he did not seek fame or fortune. He lived modestly, often giving away much of his earnings to support those in need. This choice reflects his understanding that the fruit of one's labor is not meant for self-glorification, but for serving others and glorifying God. Another significant aspect of Lewis's approach to silent work was his commitment to the truth. He once said, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." This candid reflection reminds us that the path of faithful labor is not always easy or without hardship. Lewis's dedication to truth, even when it was uncomfortable or challenging, serves as a powerful example of integrity in action. Consider, for instance, his willingness to tackle difficult topics in his writings. In The Problem of Pain, he confronted the question of why a loving God allows suffering, a topic many might avoid. Yet, Lewis did so with grace and honesty, trusting that his words, though born of quiet labor, could provide comfort and clarity to those in need. His faithfulness also extended to the mundane aspects of life. Lewis did not wait for grand opportunities to serve. He found meaning in small, consistent acts of obedience. This mirrors the teaching of Luke 16 verse 10, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." By dedicating himself to the daily work before him, writing, teaching, mentoring, and loving others, Lewis demonstrated that true greatness is often found in the ordinary. In a society that often equates success with visibility, Lewis's life stands as a countercultural testimony. It reminds us that our worth is not determined by the opinions of others, but by the faithfulness with which we answer God's call. Even when the world is silent, God sees, knows, and values every effort we make in His name. This principle is particularly relevant in our modern age, where social media and constant connectivity often tempt us to seek validation through likes, shares, and public recognition. Yet, as Lewis's life teaches us, the most meaningful work often happens away from the spotlight. It is in the quiet moments, when we labor with love, diligence, and faith, that we align ourselves with God's purposes and experience the peace that comes from knowing our work is pleasing to Him. The significance of working in silence is further illuminated by Lewis's understanding of humility. For Lewis, humility was not about thinking less of oneself, but thinking of oneself less. He believed that the essence of a meaningful life was found in losing oneself in the service of God and others. His writings continually emphasize that pride, the constant desire for recognition and superiority, is a great sin that distances us from true joy and fulfillment. In Mere Christianity, Lewis famously wrote, "True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less." This idea challenges the worldly notion of success, which often revolves around self-promotion and personal gain. Instead, Lewis invites us to adopt a posture of humility, where our focus shifts away from self-centered ambitions and toward fulfilling God's purpose in our lives. One striking example of this humility is seen in Lewis's approach to criticism. Throughout his career, he faced skepticism and, at times, outright hostility from academic peers who dismissed his theological works as unworthy of serious consideration. Despite this, Lewis remained steadfast in his calling. He did not retaliate or seek to defend his reputation. Rather, he continued to write and teach with grace and conviction, trusting that his work would bear fruit in God's time. This quiet perseverance aligns with the teaching in 1 Peter 5 verse 6, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time." Lewis's willingness to endure criticism without losing heart reflects a deep trust in God's plan and timing. It also serves as a reminder that our labor, when done in humility, is never in vain, even if its impact is not immediately visible. Another profound aspect of Lewis's philosophy is the way he viewed his work as a partnership with God. He believed that human creativity and effort were gifts from God, entrusted to us for his glory. This perspective is beautifully captured in his book The Hoss and His Boy, where one of the characters reflects on their journey and realizes that a slender Christ-like figure had been guiding them all along, even when they were unaware of his presence. This concept of divine partnership challenges us to see our work, no matter how ordinary or mundane, as an opportunity to collabor with God. When we work in silence, free from the distractions of worldly approval, we create space for God to guide and shape our efforts. Proverbs 16 verse 3 reinforces this truth. "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans." Lewis's writings also reveal his deep understanding of the redemptive power of hidden work. In The Great Divorce, he describes a woman who lived a quiet and unassuming life, yet her faithfulness and love made her a great figure in heaven. This portrayal underscores the idea that the value of our work is not measured by earthly standards, but by the eternal impact it has on the lives of others and on God's kingdom. In addition to his literary contributions, Lewis's personal life further exemplifies the power of silent labor. Despite his growing influence, he chose to live simply, dedicating his time to mentoring students, corresponding with readers, and caring for those in need. His generosity and willingness to serve quietly, without seeking recognition, demonstrate a heart fully surrendered to God. This selfless approach reflects the teaching of Matthew 5 verse 16, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Lewis understood that the purpose of our work is not to draw attention to ourselves, but to point others to the source of all goodness, God. In a world that often prioritizes outward success over inward faithfulness, Lewis's life serves as a powerful reminder of what truly matters. His dedication to working in silence, with humility and trusting God, challenges us to reevaluate our own motivations and to seek a deeper sense of purpose in all that we do. Lewis's approach to work in silence also finds its roots in the broader Christian understanding of stewardship. He viewed his talents and opportunities as gifts entrusted to him by God, meant to be cultivated and used for the benefit of others. This stewardship was not limited to his writing, but extended to his relationships, his time, and even his trials. One of the most poignant examples of Lewis's silent stewardship was his relationship with Joy Davidman, his wife. Their union, though brief, was marked by profound love and shared faith. During her battle with cancer, Lewis quietly cared for her, setting aside his own comforts and ambitions. His reflections during this time, later captured in A Grief Observed, reveal the depth of his faith and his willingness to endure suffering without complaint, trusting in God's greater plan. This quiet perseverance in the face of adversity, known as the call in James 1 verse 12, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." Lewis's ability to bear his burdens silently, yet faithfully, demonstrates the power of trusting in God's promises, even when the path is difficult. Lewis also recognized that silent labor requires patience, a willingness to wait for God's timing, and to trust that He will bring about the fruit of our efforts. In his essay on obstinacy in belief, Lewis argues that faith is not a blind leap, but a commitment to trust in God's faithfulness, even when evidence of His work is not immediately apparent. This perspective encourages us to remain steadfast in our own work, trusting that God sees every effort, and will use it for His purposes. The quiet, patient nature of Lewis's work is particularly evident in his approach to storytelling. His Chronicles of Narnia series, though widely beloved today, was initially met with mixed reviews. Yet Lewis did not allow criticism to deter him. He continued to write with the conviction that these stories could plant seeds of faith in the hearts of readers, young and old. And indeed, the series has become a timeless tool for introducing spiritual truths to generations of readers. Lewis's faithfulness to his calling also highlights the importance of obedience. He understood that our role is not to control the outcome of our work, but to be obedient to the task God has set before us. This aligns with the teaching in Micah 6 verse 8. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. By focusing on obedience rather than results, Lewis was free to labor with a sense of peace and purpose. Moreover, Lewis's life and writings challenge us to reconsider what it means to lead. He was not a leader in the conventional sense, commanding armies or ruling nations. Yet his quiet influence, born of humility and truth, has shaped countless lives. This echoes Jesus' teaching in Matthew 20 verse 26, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." Through his silent work, Lewis exemplified servant leadership. He did not seek to elevate himself, but to serve others through his words, his actions, and his faith. His life reminds us that the greatest leaders are often those who labor quietly in the background, prioritizing the well-being of others over their own recognition. Another key element of Lewis's philosophy was his belief in the eternal significance of every task, no matter how small. In The Weight of Glory, he writes, "There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals, whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit." This perspective invites us to view our work, and the people we encounter through it, with a sense of reverence and responsibility. Lewis's life teaches us that working in silence does not mean working without impact. On the contrary, silent labor often has the deepest and most lasting influence, precisely because it is rooted in humility, obedience, and love. By choosing to focus on the eternal rather than the temporary, Lewis modeled a way of living and working that transcends the fleeting applause of the world. Lewis's conviction that silent work holds eternal significance also shaped his perspective on time and the rhythms of life. He often emphasized the importance of faithfulness in the present moment, cautioning against the temptation to live for a future recognition or dwell on past failures. In his essay The Screwtape Letters, he warns of the enemy's strategy to distract believers by fixating their thoughts on the future, which he describes as the least like eternity. Instead, Lewis encourages a focus on the present, where God's grace is actively at work. This focus on the present moment aligns with Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. By embracing each moment as an opportunity to glorify God, Lewis reminds us that even the smallest tasks, when performed with love and diligence, carry eternal value. Whether teaching a class, responding to a letter, or writing a story, Lewis poured his heart into each moment, trusting that God would weave these efforts into his greater plan. Another dimension of Lewis's silent work lies in his understanding of vocation. For him, vocation was not merely a profession or a title, but a divine calling, an invitation to participate in God's redemptive work. He saw writing as his vocation, a means through which he could communicate truth and inspire faith. However, Lewis also believed that every vocation, no matter how ordinary, has the potential to reflect God's glory. This perspective is beautifully illustrated in the Chronicles of Narnia. Characters like Lucy Pivenzi and Reaper Cheap, though small and unassuming, accomplish great things because of their faithfulness to their calling. Their actions remind readers that it is not the size of the task, but the spirit in which it is undertaken that determines its significance. This echoes the teaching in Colossians 3 verse 17, "And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him." Lewis's humility and faith also shine through in his willingness to embrace hiddenness. In a world obsessed with visibility, Lewis was content to work behind the scenes, trusting that his efforts would bear fruit in ways he might never see. This quiet surrender to God's sovereignty is a profound lesson for all who feel unseen or unappreciated in their own work. Lewis reminds us that God often uses hidden labor to accomplish his greatest purposes. Consider the parable of the mustard seed in Matthew 13 verse 31 to 32. "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches." Lewis's life mirrors this parable. His works, born of quiet, faithful labor, have grown into a towering legacy that continues to inspire and guide countless souls. One of the most striking aspects of Lewis's quiet labor is how it transcends cultural and temporal boundaries. His writings, though deeply rooted in Christian theology, speak to universal truths that resonate with believers and non-believers alike. This ability to reach across divides stems from his commitment to authenticity and love. Lewis did not write to impose his beliefs, but to share the beauty and truth he had encountered. His approach challenges us to consider how we engage with the world through our own work. Are we motivated by a desire to prove ourselves, or are we driven by a love for others and a desire to glorify God? In 1 Corinthians 13 verse 2, Paul reminds us, "If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing." Lewis understood that love is the foundation of all meaningful work, and this love shines through in every word he wrote. Another aspect of Lewis's silent labor was his willingness to engage with difficult questions and doubts. Rather than avoiding challenging topics, he confronted them head-on, offering thoughtful and compassionate responses that pointed to God's truth. In works like The Problem of Pain and The Grief Observed, Lewis grappled with the reality of suffering and loss, drawing on his own experiences to offer comfort and hope to others. This willingness to wrestle with hard questions reflects the heart of Psalm 34 verse 18. "The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Lewis's vulnerability and honesty in addressing pain remind us that silent work often involves enduring trials and trusting God to bring redemption through them. Finally, Lewis's commitment to working in silence reminds us of the ultimate example of this principle, Jesus Christ. Throughout his ministry, Jesus often withdrew to solitary places to pray and seek the Father's will. He performed miracles without seeking recognition, taught profound truths in humble settings, and endured the cross with quiet obedience. Lewis's life and writings echo this example, inviting us to follow Christ's model of humility, faithfulness, and love. C.S. Lewis's life and writings remind us that true greatness is not found in the spotlight, but in the quiet, faithful pursuit of God's calling. His example encourages us to work diligently, not for the applause of others, but for the glory of the one who sees every effort, even those done in silence. In a world filled with distractions and demands for recognition, Lewis's life serves as a beacon of humility, perseverance, and trust in God's purposes. Let his legacy inspire you to embrace the work God has placed before you with a heart of faithfulness and love, knowing that even the smallest act, when offered to him, has eternal significance. Remember the words of Galatians 6 verse 9. "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. If this message has touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the power of silence, faithful labor in your own life. Live in a way that honors Christ, trusting Him to guide your every step. Before you go, we invite you to support this channel by subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss a new message. If this video has inspired you, please click the like button. Write Amen in the comments as a declaration of your desire to live in harmony with Christ, and share this video with someone you care about, someone who may need encouragement or guidance in their journey. Together, let us walk in faith, inspired by the example of C.S. Lewis, and remain steadfast in the quiet work God has entrusted to us. Thank you for being here, and may God bless you abundantly.